My name is Rachel, and I've got a system. It works for me, and it's worked for years now. I wake up, I go to the gym, I work my bartending shifts at the trendy cocktail place downtown, and I live my life exactly how I want to live it. No strings, no complications, no messy emotional entanglements that leave you crying into your pillow at 2 a.m. wondering what went wrong. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching. I learned early that people leave. They always leave. My dad left when I was 12. My first serious girlfriend in college left me for some guy she met in her women's studies class. The irony wasn't lost on me. And my last attempt at something real ended with her moving across the country for a job she never even mentioned she was applying for. So I adapted. I evolved. I created a better way. The way I see it, everyone's looking for something different anyway. Take last Friday night. I met this girl, Sarah, at the club. Tall, athletic, short blonde hair. The kind of confidence that comes from being good at everything she tries. She was visiting from Seattle, some kind of tech consultant, and she had this laugh that made everyone in a 10-foot radius turn and look. We danced. We talked about her startup that was developing apps for sustainable living, and by midnight, we were back at her hotel. Sarah was intense, focused like she approached everything in life with the same methodical precision she probably used to code. She wanted control, wanted to be the one making the decisions, and that was fine by me. We spent the night together, and in the morning, she was already on her laptop, taking calls about server migrations while I made coffee in the tiny hotel kitchenette. She kissed me goodbye with the same efficiency she did everything else, and that was that. Clean, simple, satisfying. The weekend before that, it was Maya, completely different energy. Maya was this free-spirited artist who painted murals around the city, always had paint under her fingernails, and wore these flowing dresses that made her look like she'd stepped out of a bohemian dream. She lived in this converted warehouse space filled with canvases and sculptures made from recycled materials. Maya wanted romance, wanted to slow dance in her studio to music from the 1960s, wanted to feed me strawberries, and talk about how colors have emotions. With Maya, everything was soft and dreamy. She'd trace patterns on my skin and whisper about how the curve of my shoulder reminded her of the coastline at Big Sur. We spent Saturday afternoon in her bed while rain drummed against the skylights, and she painted tiny flowers on my arm with watercolors, laughing when I shivered at the cool touch of the brush. Maya wanted tenderness, wanted to feel like we were the only two people in the world, and I gave her exactly that for those 2 days. Then there was Jess, the law student with the sharp suits and sharper wit. Jess was all about the intellectual connection. She wanted debates over dinner, wanted someone who could keep up with her rapid-fire analysis of Supreme Court decisions and the sociological implications of gentrification. We'd spend hours at this 24-hour diner, drinking terrible coffee and dissecting everything from climate policy to the representation of queer women in contemporary media. Jess needed someone who could challenge her, who wouldn't be intimidated by her intelligence or her ambition to change the world one case at a time. The thing about all these women, Sarah, Maya, Jess, and the dozens of others over the past few years, is that they're all looking for something specific. They want romance or adventure or intellectual stimulation or just plain physical connection, and I can be whatever they need me to be for however long they need it. It's like being an actress, slipping into different roles, becoming the perfect complement to whatever they're missing in their lives. And here's what I realized. They're all fundamentally the same in their differentness. They all want to be seen, to be understood, to feel special and chosen. They want someone to pay attention to the particular way they laugh, or the specific dreams they harbor, or the unique way they see the world. And I can do that. I'm good at paying attention, at making people feel like they're the center of the universe for the time we're together. But the sameness goes deeper than that. They all want something I can't actually give them. Not really. They want forever. They want promises. They want me to be the missing piece that makes their life complete. And I learned a long time ago that people aren't puzzles you can solve. We're all just stumbling around trying to figure it out. And the best you can hope for is to stumble around together for a while without causing too much damage. Sarah calls sometimes when she's back in town for work. Maya texts me photos of her latest murals with messages like, "Thinking of you." Jess sends me articles she thinks I'd find interesting, always with little notes about how I'd probably disagree with the author's conclusions. They remember me fondly, I think, as this brief, bright moment in their lives when someone really listened to them, really saw them. And that's enough. It has to be enough. My friends think I'm crazy. "You're going to end up alone," my roommate Lisa tells me regularly. "You're never going to find love if you don't let anyone get close." But Lisa's been in therapy for 2 years, trying to get over her ex-girlfriend who cheated on her with 3 different people. Love, as far as I can tell, is just another word for giving someone the power to destroy you. I prefer my way. I'm honest about what I can offer, which is a good time, genuine attention, and whatever version of connection they're looking for as long as they want it. No false promises, no pretending I'm going to change, no leading anyone on. It's actually more ethical than what most people do, if you think about it. That was my philosophy until I met Barbara. I was working a Thursday night shift, usually dead, but we had some corporate event that brought in a crowd of well-dressed professionals who didn't know how to tip. I was mixing a complicated cocktail for some guy who kept changing his order when I saw her sitting at the end of the bar, scrolling through her phone with a half-empty glass of wine in front of her. Barbara was stunning in this effortless way that made it seem like she wasn't even trying. Dark hair pulled back in a loose bun, minimal makeup, wearing a simple black dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. But it wasn't her looks that caught my attention. It was the way she carried herself, like she owned whatever space she occupied without having to prove it to anyone. She was clearly waiting for someone who wasn't showing up. She kept checking her phone, glancing toward the door, and there was this slight tension in her shoulders that told the whole story. I'd seen it 100 times. The first date that goes nowhere. The friend who cancels last minute. The disappointment that comes with expecting something from another person. When I finally made it down to her end of the bar, she looked up at me with these incredible brown eyes and said, "Can I get another glass of the Pinot Grigio? And maybe your honest opinion about whether I should wait another 20 minutes for someone who's already 40 minutes late?" "Depends," I said, refilling her glass. "Is this someone worth waiting for?" She laughed, and it wasn't like Sarah's attention-grabbing laugh or Maya's musical giggle. It was warm and genuine and a little sad. "I thought so 2 hours ago." "Now I'm not so sure." We talked while I worked. These little conversations in between customers. She was an art gallery curator, had moved to the city 6 months ago for a job at one of the prestigious galleries uptown. She was intelligent like Jess, but without the need to prove it. Creative like Maya, but with this grounded practicality. She had opinions about everything. The music playing in the bar, the way the city treated its artists, the pretentious way people talked about wine. But she expressed them with this dry humor that made me want to keep asking questions just to hear what she'd say next. Her date never showed up. By closing time, she was still there. And we were deep in a conversation about whether the city's art scene was becoming too commercialized. I found myself doing something I never did. I asked if she wanted to get coffee sometime. "Are you asking me out?" she said, and there was something in her tone I couldn't quite read. "I'm asking if you want to continue this conversation somewhere that serves better wine," I said. She studied my face for a long moment. "Okay," she said finally. But I should warn you, I don't do casual. I should have paid attention to that warning. I should have recognized it as fundamentally incompatible with everything I'd built my life around. Instead, I just smiled and said, "Neither do I." Which wasn't exactly a lie, but wasn't exactly the truth either. Our first real date was at this little Italian place in her neighborhood. Barbara had done her research. She knew about the owner's family recipes, the story behind the restaurant's name, the reason they only served wine from small vineyards in Tuscany. She approached dating the same way she approached everything else, with thoroughness and intention. She asked me questions no one had ever asked me before. Not just what I did for work or where I grew up, but what I thought about when I couldn't sleep, what made me feel most like myself, what I wanted my life to look like in 10 years. I found myself giving her answers I didn't even know I had. "I think people are afraid of being known," she said over dessert. "Really known. Not just the surface stuff. They'd rather stay mysterious than risk someone seeing all of them and deciding it's not enough." "Maybe being mysterious is safer," I said. "Maybe some things are better left unknown." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "Maybe. But what's the point of connecting with someone if you're not actually connecting?" That night, I walked her home and she invited me up for coffee. Her apartment was exactly what I'd expected, carefully curated, full of beautiful objects with stories, walls covered with art from artists she represented. She made coffee with the same attention to detail she brought to everything else, measuring and timing with precision. We sat on her couch, and she told me about growing up in a small town where being different meant being invisible, about her ex-girlfriend who wanted her to be less ambitious, less opinionated, less everything that made her who she was. She talked about moving to the city as this act of faith in herself, believing she could build the life she actually wanted instead of settling for what seemed possible. "What about you?" she asked. "What brought you here?" I could have told her the truth, that I came here to disappear, to become someone who didn't need anything from anyone. Instead, I told her about wanting to bartend at the best cocktail bars in the country, about the art of creating perfect drinks for people who needed them. It wasn't entirely false, but it wasn't the whole story either. We kissed that night for the first time, and it was different from all the kisses that came before. With Barbara, I wasn't performing a role or giving her what I thought she wanted. It felt like she was kissing the actual me, whoever that was, and somehow that was enough. We started seeing each other regularly. Barbara would come to the bar on my shifts, sitting at the end with a book or her tablet, occasionally looking up to catch my eye and smile. I'd go to gallery openings with her, standing beside her as she talked to artists and collectors, watching her work with this quiet admiration for how she could make everyone feel like the most important person in the room. She was nothing like the other women I'd been with, and not just because she was looking for something serious. Sarah had been confident, but Barbara was secure. Maya had been artistic, but Barbara understood art as both beauty and business. Jess had been intelligent, but Barbara was wise in this way that made me want to ask her opinion about everything. The problem was that Barbara wanted to know me, really know me. She'd ask about my family, my past relationships, my dreams beyond mixing drinks and living paycheck to paycheck. She wanted to understand why I lived the way I lived, why I kept people at arm's length, what I was so afraid of. I started making up stories, little lies that felt easier than the truth. I told her about fictional relationships that ended amicably, about choosing independence over settling down, about being focused on my career goals. She listened with this thoughtful expression, and I could tell she sensed there was more to the story, but she didn't push. For 3 months, we existed in this strange space where I was more honest with her than I'd been with anyone in years, but still holding back the essential truth about who I really was. She'd stay over at my place, and I'd wake up to find her making breakfast, humming while she worked, perfectly content in my messy kitchen with its mismatched dishes and broken coffee maker. She'd leave little notes in my bathroom mirror or tucked into my jacket pocket, just simple things like thinking of you or can't wait to see you tonight. Barbara made me want things I'd convinced myself I didn't need. She made me want to plan weekends in advance, to have someone to call when something good or bad happened, to split the check at restaurants because we were building something together instead of just passing time. She made me want to be known by someone, really known, and still be loved. But the longer we were together, the more I could see her getting frustrated. She'd ask me questions about my past, and I'd deflect with humor or change the subject. She'd try to make plans more than a week in advance, and I'd make excuses about not knowing my work schedule. She wanted to meet my friends, my family, to become part of my actual life, instead of just this separate compartment I kept her in. "I feel like you're always holding something back," she said one night after we'd been together for 4 months. We were in her bed, and she was tracing patterns on my shoulder the way Maya used to do. But with Barbara, it felt like she was trying to map the parts of me I wouldn't let her see. "I'm here," I said. "I'm with you." "But are you really?" She propped herself up on her elbow and looked at me. "Because sometimes it feels like you're just playing a part, like you're being the version of yourself you think I want to see." The worst part was that she was right. Even with Barbara, even though I cared about her more than I'd cared about anyone in years, I was still performing. I was being the version of myself that could fit into her life, that could make her happy without requiring too much vulnerability in return. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. "I don't know how to be with someone without eventually disappointing them." "So you disappoint them first?" she asked. "You keep them at a distance so they can't get close enough to hurt you?" I didn't answer, but she could see it in my face. "Rachel," she said, and her voice was gentle but firm. "I can't be in a relationship with someone who won't let me in. I can't love someone who's determined to remain a mystery." That word, love, hung in the air between us like a challenge. She'd never said it before, and hearing it now felt like everything I'd been afraid of crystallizing into reality. "I need to think," I said, and I could see the disappointment flash across her face before she schooled her expression back to neutral. "Okay," she said. "But Rachel—" "Don't think too long. I deserve someone who's sure about me." I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the women I'd been with over the years, all the different versions of myself I'd presented, all the ways I'd convinced myself that keeping things surface level was kinder than going deep. I thought about Sarah's efficiency, Maya's tenderness, Jess's intensity, and how I'd given each of them exactly what they'd seemed to want while never risking anything real myself. Barbara was asking for something different. She was asking for the truth, messy and complicated, and potentially disappointing as it might be. She was asking me to trust her with the parts of myself I'd spent years protecting, to believe that maybe this time, being known wouldn't end in abandonment. I spent 2 weeks avoiding her calls, making excuses about being busy with work, telling myself I was doing her a favor by letting her find someone who could give her what she wanted. But the truth was, I missed her. I missed her laugh and her opinions about everything, and the way she made me feel like I was interesting and worth knowing. I missed having someone to text when something funny happened at work, someone who remembered that I liked my coffee with too much sugar and not enough cream. I missed being seen by someone who seemed to actually like what she saw. It took me those 2 weeks to realize that I was in love with her. Not the performance of being in love, not the temporary infatuation I'd felt with other women, but the real thing. The terrifying, vulnerable, life-changing thing that makes you want to build a future with someone instead of just enjoying the present. I showed up at her gallery on a Thursday afternoon with no plan except to tell her the truth. She was in the back office, reviewing submissions from local artists, and when she saw me, her face went through this complicated series of emotions before settling on cautious hope. "I need to tell you something," I said. "Actually, I need to tell you everything." So I did. I told her about my system, about the way I'd been living for years, about all the women who'd wanted different things from me, and how I'd learned to become whatever they needed. I told her about my fear of being left, about how I'd convinced myself that shallow connections were safer than deep ones. I told her about the lies I'd told her, the ways I'd been performing even with her. "I don't know how to do this," I said finally. "I don't know how to be in love with someone without being terrified they're going to leave, but I know I want to learn. I know I want to try with you if you'll let me." Barbara listened to all of it without interrupting, her face unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Do you know what I was thinking when I first met you?" she said finally. "I was thinking that you seemed like someone who was running from something, but I couldn't figure out what. Now I know. You were running from this, from the possibility of actually connecting with someone." "I know," I said. "I know, and I'm sorry." "I don't need you to be sorry," she said. "I need you to be honest. With me and with yourself. I need you to decide if you want to keep running or if you want to try staying still for once." "I want to stay still," I said. "I want to stay still with you." She stood up and walked around her desk to where I was standing. "It's going to be hard," she said. "Learning to trust someone. Learning to be trusted. It's going to be messy and complicated, and sometimes it's going to feel easier to run." "I know," I said. "And I'm going to need you to keep choosing to stay, even when it gets scary." "I will," I said. "I want to." She reached out and took my hands. "Then let's try," she said. "Let's try being real with each other and see what happens." That was 6 months ago. We're still trying, still learning how to be honest about the hard things, still figuring out how to build something together instead of just existing in parallel. Barbara still challenges me, still asks the questions I don't want to answer, still refuses to let me hide behind the versions of myself that feel safer. Sometimes it's terrifying. Sometimes I wake up in her bed and feel this panic about how much I need her, how much it would destroy me if she left. But mostly, it's the best thing I've ever done. Learning to be known by someone who loves what she finds, learning to trust that vulnerability isn't the same thing as weakness, learning that maybe the thing I'd been running from all these years was actually what I'd been running toward. I still bartend at the same place, but now Barbara comes in on my shifts, not because she's killing time, but because she wants to be near me while I work. She brings her laptop and sits at the end of the bar, occasionally looking up to smile at me or steal a sip of whatever cocktail I'm perfecting. Sometimes she'll order something complicated just to watch me work. And there's this pride in her eyes that makes me want to be the best bartender in the city. We're talking about moving in together, about getting a place that's ours instead of mine or hers. We're making plans that extend beyond next weekend, talking about the gallery she wants to open someday, and the restaurant I maybe want to manage. We're building something real and lasting and terrifying and beautiful. It turns out that being known isn't the dangerous thing I thought it was. The dangerous thing is spending your whole life running from the possibility of love because you're afraid of the possibility of loss. The dangerous thing is convincing yourself that surface connections are safer than deep ones, that being temporary is better than being real. I was wrong about a lot of things, but mostly I was wrong about what people are looking for. They're not looking for the perfect version of you that fits exactly into their life. They're looking for the real version of you that's willing to build a life together, imperfect and uncertain as that might be. Barbara taught me that love isn't about finding someone who won't leave. It's about finding someone worth staying for and being someone worth staying for in return. It's about choosing each other again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.